We'll give Commissioner Frederickson a minute. It looks like he's having some IT issues really quick. Just so everybody knows, we're just waiting for a couple of the commissioners to work through some IT issues, and then we will start here shortly. One, I guess, Commissioner Callahan.
Callahan is still waiting.
Yeah.
Check in.
There's Commissioner Callahan, so we will start. I'll bring the Butte-Silver Bow Council of Commissioners meeting, or Committee of the Whole meeting to order for Wednesday, July 8th, 2020. Can we please have a roll call? Looks like we have 10 present, 1 presiding, and 1 absent. Let the record reflect Commissioner Mankins is excused. Commissioner McDonough, would you lead us in the prayer, please?
And guide us this night. We make decisions which shall greatly affect our community of Butte-Silver Bow. Direct our thoughts, words, and deeds so that we please you and best serve our fellow citizens. Amen.
Thank you, Commissioner McDonough. The next item on tonight's agenda is public comment on any items on the agenda. I do have one letter to read, but that is for one of the public hearings. So at this time, I will just open up the phone lines and see if anybody is on there. We'll see if anybody's on the phone line. Okay. Nobody's on there? looks like we're going to have to reset the phone. 1 second.
Yep, just hit the make busy, right? Yep. Back down, make busy. Screen or?
Let's reboot it. Okay, we're going to reboot the phones, and we will go back to that here in a minute. I will just move on to the report of the chair. Nothing new to report here. I would just mention that there is an increase in the COVID going around town, so I would just encourage everybody to be as safe as they most possibly can, and keep doing what you're doing and stay safe out there. As you guys do know, we are keeping the council meetings remote, so nothing has changed with that, and so far the committee meetings appear to be going as scheduled, and I haven't heard of any issues with that. But if there are some that come up, please let me know so that we can make adjustments as necessary. So that's all that I have to report tonight. I'll move on to section 1, which is bid openings, public hearings, and/or presentations. The first one is communication number 2020-238. Please keep it, or I just want to let everybody know that Tyler Currents has withdrawn this communication as he is working on a couple of issues that he is working through, so he will submit a letter at another date. So we will not take action on this or hold the public hearing, and so we will skip that one. Number 2, which is resolution number 2020-31. County Attorney Joyce, is there proof of publication?
Mr. Chairman, there is proof of publication, and it does appear to be in order.
Okay, thank you. Resolution number 2020-31 is the Judicial Committee requesting Council of Commissioners to hold a public hearing in reference to a resolution of intent to alter the boundaries of the city, county of Butte-Silver, Montana's Solid Waste Special District to include the boundaries of the town of Walkerville, and for providing for an effective date herein. County Attorney Joyce, do you have anything to report or a staff report before I take questions from the council?
Chairman Morgan, the purpose of this public hearing is to see if there are any comments regarding the expansion of the solid waste district to include the town of Walkerville. In order to expand our solid waste district, that is one of the requirements, is to hold a public hearing. And if we were to include the town of Walkerville has to agree to that assessment. And the council did receive a communication from the mayor of Walkerville some time ago, communication 2020-52, where he requested that the town of Walkerville be included in Butte-Silver Solid Waste District. The city-county has entered into a contract with McGree Trucking to provide the solid waste service, and that contract has set the annual assessment at $106.50, which would be the same assessment that would be placed on each resident in Walkerville. This process to expand the solid waste district also requires that each citizen of the town of Walkerville that would be subject to that assessment receive a protest form that they have 60 days from the date of the first publication of this public hearing to submit protests, and those letters have been sent out to them. And at this time, I would just ask that you open the public hearing and determine if there's any proponents or opponents to this proposed action.
All right, thank you. Is there any questions from any of the commissioners? Okay, seeing none, it looks like the phone is working, so we will open up the phones and see if there's anybody there. This time I'm opening it up for proponents. I will open the public hearing for Communication 2020-31 for proponents. Is there anybody? No. I'm going to read a letter that we received this evening. The date on it is July 8th of 2020. It is from John W. Reese, the mayor of Walkerville. Around 2 years ago, I and some council members began to receive questions about the cost of the garbage service for the town of Walkerville. People wanted to know why Walkerville was not included in having their garbage fee added to their taxes. I set up a meeting with Chief Executive Dave Palmer, and we discussed the matter and began working on a way to include the residences within the boundaries of the town of Walkerville so that they could pay the same fee paid by the city of Butte and the parts of the county that had been included in the original pickup areas. At several of our council meetings, we had also discussed the benefit to the town with having garbage pick for each household. As there are several rental properties throughout the town, some of the renters were not removing the garbage from the property, creating a problem for the neighbors. The council felt that by having garbage service for each dwelling on the taxes, the problem of garbage buildup might be eliminated. As mayor, I feel that it would greatly benefit the residents of the town of Walkerville if the expansion of the garbage service could include the town. I would like to thank Chief Executive Dave Palmer, County Attorney Eileen Joyce, and all of the officials of Butte-Silver Bow, along with the Council of Commissioners for their time and effort in this endeavor. Again, that was from John W. Reese. That's the only letter that I have. Is there any? I would second call for proponents. There is no callers on the phone line. Third and final call for proponents. Doesn't seem like there's anybody on the line. I will open it up for opponents. If any member of the public would like to talk about Resolution 2020-31 as an opponent, the phone lines are open. That number is 497-5009. Second call for opponents. Doesn't look like there's anybody on the phone. Third and final call for opponents. At this time, I will close the public hearing for Resolution 2020-31. Next, we are going to move on to presentations, which is number 1, communication number 2020-262. Sean Frederickson, Commissioner District number 1, requesting Council of Commissioners for time on the July 8th, 2020 Committee of the Whole agenda for a presentation from David Strohmeyer, Missoula County Commissioner on the Big Sky Passenger Rail Authority. I hope I pronounced that correctly. If I did not, I apologize. Commissioner Frederickson, I believe you have some opening remarks before we turn the floor over to Mr. Strohmeyer.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman Morgan. And thank you, Commissioner Strohmeyer, for joining us. I just wanted to read a little bio on Commissioner Strohmeyer so we have an idea on where he's at. Commissioner Strohmeyer was elected to the Missoula Board of County Commissioners in 2016 and currently chairs the Missoula Metropolitan Planning Organization's Transportation Policy Coordinating Committee. From 2006 to 2013, Dave represented Ward 1 on the Missoula City Council, where he chaired both the Public Safety and Health and Conservation Committees. Since his time on the City Council, Dave has been outspoken advocate for sustainable transportation and passenger rail. In 2019, he spearheaded an effort to establish the Big Sky Passenger Rail Authority as a means by which counties in Montana could collaborate on restoration of passenger rail service across the southern tier of the state. He also has actively participated in county efforts to address climate change, promote the arts, strengthen relations with tribal government, and steward cultural resources. And how I kind of got involved with this was Senator Tester's staff member, Eric Nyland, connected Commissioner Strohmeyer and I back in January, and we had coffee and we discussed this passenger rail authority, and I thought it was a pretty good idea to at least bring it up to discussion, and we had some plans to bring it up earlier in the year, and there was actually a rail summit that was supposed to be held in Missoula in April, and as you know, that didn't happen. So now we felt like it was a good time to move forward with this. I know that Commissioner Strohmeyer sent out the email to all the commissioners, so I'm sure you've read that. And I included the documentation, so I'm hopeful that you could do a little bit of research on your own. But now's the time for the commissioner to tell us what this is all about. So with that, I'll give it to Commissioner Strohmeyer.
Welcome, Commissioner Strohmeyer. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, commissioners, for allowing me a few minutes to chat with you tonight. There was a train blasting its horn in the background. I don't know if you guys heard that. I did not orchestrate that, but in any event, I think as well, all of you probably know, we have not seen regular passenger rail service through the southern tier of Montana since 1979. And that was the North Coast Hiawatha, which was discontinued at that point. And prior to that, there was actually service from Salt Lake City up to Butte up until about 1971. So we have a long, rich history of having been serviced by passenger rail for quite some time. But for the past 41 years, we have not. Over that time frame, there have been various attempts and efforts to try to gin up interest and enthusiasm to restore passenger rail service, but that's mainly been spearheaded by passionate individuals or by advocacy groups, and we have really not had the institutional infrastructure or governance structure to, in a meaningful way, further this initiative. So fast forward to where we are today, and I should say that in some states around the country, state legislatures are the bodies that actually establish rail authorities or rail commissions. Here in the state of Montana, I would say sadly our legislature has not shown a tremendous amount of leadership on this particular issue, but thankfully in the year 2020, and actually dating back to the 1990s when this law came onto the books here in the state of Montana, we have the ability as counties in Montana to join together collectively and establish regional rail authorities. When I took office in 2016, one of the concerns I had, and I guess even going back further when I was on the Missoula City Council at the time in the late 2000s, there was an effort for communities, cities, and towns in Montana to join together and make our voices known to our congressional delegation that passenger rail was an important initiative that we'd like to see happen. But again, we were kind of disparate, connected communities making that case. Coming on to the Board of County Commissioners for Missoula, it occurred to me that the one way that we can join together is we have contiguous counties in the state, and might there be some opportunity to do something like a port authority, like a special district to bind counties together for a statewide initiative like this? Our county attorney's office was astute enough to dig into Montana Code Annotated and found it's at 7-14-1621, this little, if ever, used statute on the books that allows counties to join together, like I mentioned, and establish rail authorities. This seemed like a mechanism that is high time to put into use, and is a way in which counties can look beyond their kind of siloed interests and join together and do something bigger that both benefits our own jurisdictions but the state as a whole. So we really do see this as a transformational project for for the state of Montana for all of the reasons that many of you probably have heard of why passenger rail is important. There are economic development benefits. There are certainly social equity benefits in terms of providing a much-needed transportation mode that would serve folks who otherwise might not have a great opportunity to travel either by air or by motor vehicle. And certainly there are sustainability and environmental benefits to rail over other modes of transportation. By some estimates, if you look to the High Line here in Montana with the Empire Builder, by some estimates, that rail line brings about $37 million or so worth of economic benefits to the state of Montana. One can only imagine that would be compounded here in the southern part of the state, where the majority of Montana's population resides. In terms of what this rail authority is, and I think the best example would be it is much like a port authority, much like any other special district that is an individual governing body or entity. So the role of counties in this is to do two things. One, to adopt a joint resolution which would establish the rail authority, and two, to have a seat at the table by way of appointing the board of directors to this authority. Once that's established, that's pretty much the totality of county's obligation to this. And it, like I say, it gives a seat at the table for counties. It gives a voice for counties to further this initiative. So there are no financial obligations on the part of counties to participate in the rail authority. Certainly, if counties so chose, they could, through in-kind support or through financial contributions, could help with the operation of the authority, but there's by no means any obligation for that. Right at this point in time, we have 7 counties across the state who have expressed an interest in establishing the authority. These are Sanders, Missoula, Broadwater, Gallatin, Park, Prairie, and Dawson County. We would certainly love to add Butte-Silver to the mix. Admittedly, at least at first, and this is probably no great revelation, the active rail line that would most likely be used as an east-west connection would travel through Helena, since Homestake Pass has not been in use for quite some time. However, having said that, there are rail lines and potential for rail lines through Butte-Silver County. Certainly, if Butte-Silver wanted to, at some point, sooner rather than later, advocate for reactivation of Homestake Pass, having a seat at the table would be critical. I should say we are also looking beyond just east-west connections through the state of Montana to points east and west beyond, but also looking at what's the opportunity in the year 2020 to have north-south connectivity, be that either through Denver up to Billings or, again, from Salt Lake City up to Butte and to points beyond. So having a seat at the table from that standpoint, I think, would certainly be beneficial and critical, and we would welcome Butte-Silver participation in what is, in some respects, a pretty unprecedented collaboration between counties in the state. The way this would work from here on out is, at this point in time, the draft resolution that I think all of you should have was originally crafted as a resolution of intention. So it would be a mechanism by which a county could have adopted it to demonstrate that they have an intent of adopting the full-blown resolution down the line. So far, none of the 7 counties that I've mentioned have availed themselves of adopting the resolution of intention. They have all opted to either simply weigh in that they have an interest in pursuing this. Some counties, and you might have received this also, both Gallatin County and Sanders County simply sent us a letter to reflect their intent to participate in the establishment of the resolution, or the authority, I should say. And once we have finalized, and I hope to do this in the next few days, the list of counties who would like to participate in establishing the authority, we will then finalize the joint resolution. We're working with our bond counsel, Dorsey Whitney, as we speak to make some final adjustments. But we will then insert the names of all the participating counties, redistribute that to the counties, and then you would run it through your typical public notice and adoption of a resolution like this process, setting a public hearing and such. We in Missoula County have set our public hearing on July 30th, but admittedly other counties might have a different time frame for what amount of notice they want to give their constituents based off the statutory minimum of what we would have to do. So I think I'm going to stop talking right there, and I would be happy to answer any questions that folks might have.
Commissioner, thank you for the comments and for the presentation. I know there's a lot to this. I just have a couple of questions regarding numbers of counties. Is there a certain number of counties that are required to get before you can move forward? The second question that I have is, for instance, the home stake line. I don't know if it's BP or UN, or UP, excuse me, Union Pacific. It's my understanding they own that line. So when do they get involved in this process and have a say of, yeah, you can use our rail?
Yeah, great questions, Mr. Chair. As far as the number of counties, the Montana legislature set the bar pretty low. So 2 counties are all that's necessary to form a regional rail authority by joint resolution. So we've hit that mark at this point in time, at least by way of folks who have expressed an interest in participating. The final tally will come once each of the counties who've expressed an interest actually adopt formally the joint resolution, but you only need 2 counties to do so. As far as the BNSF line up over Homestake Pass, any of the lines that we're contemplating utilizing for passenger rail would be owned by a host railroad, either BNSF, Union Pacific, or Montana Rail Link portion of the line, which actually is BNSF, but Montana Rail Link is in a long-term lease. So this is not at all uncommon across the country where Amtrak operates over a host railroad. And my conversations with both BNSF and also Montana Rail Link are such that they want to interact directly with Amtrak, and Amtrak would be the likely partner in a scenario like this. There's certainly the possibility for a joint public-private partnership, and I have been in contact with some Gallatin County-based investors who have an interest in seeing if a private-public partnership with Amtrak could be had. But in any event, we would be working at some point in time after the rail authority is established with the host railroads, with Amtrak. And unlike some scenarios where the actual railroad authority or commission would be owning and operating the trains, the lines, that's not the sort of scenario we're contemplating here. It's merely using the rail authority as the mechanism by which the formal governance structure that is not currently in place, but could be the vehicle by which we interface with our congressional delegation, with Amtrak, with the host railroads, to seek funding, to possibly secure, for instance, build grant funding or other funding that might be available, and to collaborate with communities to figure out how to implement a system like this.
Commissioner, is that why it's important that the government be involved, so that there's funding mechanisms, rather than just having a private business right now see a need and try to open the business as is without the government being involved?
Yeah, that is correct. Like I say, the host railroads, Burlington Northern Santa Fe, Montana Rail Link, Union Pacific, really do want to work with Amtrak, and the obstacles and the challenges with kind of a unilateral relationship just between those host railroads and a private entity are difficult, if not insurmountable, in the situation that we're looking at here. So this would be that conduit that we currently are really lacking.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Frederickson, it looks like you had something, and then Commissioner Sorich.
Thank you, Chairman Morgan. I have two questions. The first question is, I know that you were trying to get all your counties wrapped up by this Friday, and that's just something that we cannot vote upon procedural-wise until next Wednesday. So I didn't know if that date is a hard date or if you could give us a little leadway for the following Friday to make a decision on this, on if we intend to pass the resolution.
Yeah, Commissioner Frederickson and Mr. Chair, I think that would certainly be feasible. And at this point, and I provided you a couple examples, Commissioner Frederickson, as far as what both Sanders and Gallatin County did, and it was not that complex of a communication to us. It was simply a letter. So if by whatever means you need to formally notice and vote on signing a letter, I think we can accommodate that. Like I mentioned, we have set our public hearing for the 30th of July on the resolution, so I think that would leave us plenty of time by the end of next week to finalize the resolution and redistribute it to all of the counties for adoption.
And thank you. And my second question is, I think a major concern would be if this interferes with freight rail, and I'm sure Missoula County has a ton of freight rail going through it right now, and as do all these other counties, because the rails line's already there. And I'm just trying to figure out if this somehow interferes with that freight rail traffic, or how that all works. I know nothing about railroads, so full disclosure.
Yeah, Commissioner, you're absolutely right that one of the concerns that certainly I should say at this point in time, the host railroads, Burlington Northern Santa Fe and Montana Rail Link, are neutral as far as passenger rail. Their concern is that it does, as you suggested, it does not interfere with their freight rail operations. So one of the first tasks of this rail authority is going to be working in concert with our congressional delegation to try to do some additional analysis and updated studies that would demonstrate and really identify what are the infrastructure needs that would have to be put into place to avoid those sorts of conflicts. Because absolutely, there will be at some point in time in the future investment needed to double track certain portions of lines that are currently single tracked, or add additional sidings such that you don't have passenger trains conflicting with the freight trains. But really the first step is setting ourselves up for success. So sometimes folks have asked me, what's the likelihood that this will ever come to pass in our lifetime or in anyone's lifetime? And my response is absolutely zero unless we do something different. And this is doing that something different by way of setting up a structure that positions ourselves for a shovel-ready project. Because I think it's not a matter of if, but when the federal government decides to invest in infrastructure in this nation in a big way. And those communities, those states that are positioned to take action will, and those who do not, will not be in a position to do so.
Commissioner Sorich, you had a question?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. More comments than a question. I'm all in favor of this authority. I think it's a great idea. I think there's numerous reasons. Number one, Mr. Frommer, thank you for taking this on. I'm all in favor. I agree with you. I think that one day you're probably absolutely right. The federal government is probably going to look at building the railroads back up. I think it'd be a great economic boon for Montana and Butte-Silver if we were part of it. Hopefully, to put some people back to work in a time when we desperately need some jobs. Hard work but good paying jobs. And also I think they're probably also going to be looking at mass transit. This country really has to look more forward to mass transit. Maybe I'm putting the cart before the horse right now, but I think you're right. We got to probably look at the end and work towards the finish. I'm all for it.
Commissioner Shaw.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Hello, Dave. Nice to see you again.
Hi.
You're not on city council now. You're a county commissioner. Okay. So my question to you, Dave, and I also like Commissioner Sorge, I am totally on board, so to speak. I would like to be on board. But a question is, are there other passenger rail authorities in Montana that have done this? And, is there a blueprint of some sort that we can kind of tag along with?
No, we are at the tip of the spear in the state of Montana. We've looked and have found no instance of this statute being used to create a regional rail authority like this. So better late than never, and as far as I'm concerned, we better take action before the legislature learns about it and decides to strip it out of Montana code. So,
okay, thank you.
Yeah, you bet.
Commissioner, has there been any business plan developed so we kind of know what's the passenger load looking like? Are we looking at hundreds of people, single-digit people? What are you looking for the clientele?
Yeah, so the last study was conducted back in 2009. This was something that John Tester helped with. It was a study looking at the restoration of the North Coast Hiawatha route. Clearly, a lot has changed in the last decade, one of which is I have been hearing from members of the Montana High-Tech Business Alliance who are excited about this as a means for both their employees, but also for employee attraction, but also for them to be able to do business while they are traveling between their offices here in the state and elsewhere. That wasn't something that was necessarily on the radar a little over a decade ago. So in terms of ridership, one of the conclusions of that study, which is now over a decade old and I would say stale and needing desperately to be updated, was that even with the Empire Builder, there would still be a viable line here in the southern tier of the state to the order of magnitude of, I want to say, between 200,000 and 300,000 riders per year estimated. And this is not just within the state of Montana. For a truly viable system, I think this, and I think many would agree, this system needs to be connected to points east and west. So to Spokane, Portland, Seattle, and east into Bismarck, Fargo, and Minneapolis, St. Paul. So the short answer to your question is I don't have the exact numbers at my fingertips, but it's a significant order of magnitude that we're talking for ridership. And with Yellowstone National Park as one of our iconic locations here in the state that would attract visitors, provided that we can ever get past COVID-19, I think there's just great potential. Oh, as far as the business plan goes, the closest thing to that was that feasibility study. I would see this entity, this rail authority, as being, again, the vehicle that would help with spearheading the sorts of analyses and business modeling that you're looking for.
Okay. Any other questions from the commissioners? Commissioner Fisher. Oh, Commissioner Fisher, you're on mute.
Sorry, can you hear me now?
We got you.
Thank you, Chairman Morgan. Thank you, Commissioner from Missoula. Sounds like a great plan. I'm in favor of it. The question I got is, what are the pros and cons and the benefits and non-benefits of having multiple counties? At one time you said you only needed 2 in the state of Montana. What is the benefit or non-benefit of having more counties than less? Like, I see Butte and Missoula maybe Helena, you know, and going down to Salt Lake area is a benefit. Going over the Homestake Pass is probably something that's not really feasible for a long term. What's the benefit of having like 3 counties that are in one area versus 3 that are in another area versus having like 7 that you got now? Got a phone. Thank you.
Sure. Thanks, Commissioner. I think the benefit is representation. I was shooting for 23 counties, and I still am, across the state from Webo all the way to Sanders. And that's really what it boils down to, is having the interests of Montana from North Dakota to Idaho represented on this board and this authority. You're absolutely right. The statutory language the bar is so minimal that, yeah, Butte-Silver, and Missoula could pull this off by ourselves if we so chose. But I think we'd lose a great deal of clout, if we're trying to make the case to our congressional delegation that this is a priority for the state of Montana and the individual constituents who we represent. It's a lot easier to make that case when you have counties in the extreme east and west and all points in between at the table making decisions. I think it's as simple as that.
Follow-up, Commissioner Fisher,
Thank you, Chairman Morgan, once again. I fully understand that. I guess my concern is the more you get involved, the more everyone pulls for their area, you know what I mean? That's one of my concerns. I'm all for it. I think we should go for it and sort out the pieces later, but that would be one of my concerns is that Montana's such a diversified state, and, you know, the eastern part of the state versus the southern, northwestern part is a little different. So thank you for being here. I support your endeavor. Thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Olson.
Oh, Mr. Chair, if I might just add one last comment there. Yeah, point well taken. So, for instance, take Dawson County. They were one of the first counties to come on board, and it's no surprise because they're in Glendive. They were recently notified that BNSF is closing down their maintenance facility. So I think Dawson County, the Dawson County Economic Development Council, and residents of Glendive are desperately looking for what's the future of that rail line beyond just what it's been used for in the past. So they see an opportunity of passenger rail as an economic development potential for their community, and they're going to want a passenger rail stop in Glendive. I guarantee that. And I'm sure that Butte would also. So far, Lewis and Clark County to your north, friends to the north, have been somewhat on the fence on this, and I told them, well, one of the advantages, and this is self-serving on all of our parts, is we want to see our constituents served by good transportation options. So it's only to be expected that folks will have some self-interest in mind, but my glass half full approach on this evening is that we would also be looking out for one another across the state.
Commissioner Olson. Oh, Commissioner Olson, you're on mute.
Thank you, Chairman Morgan. Is that better?
Yes, it is.
I think this is a good proposal. At least at this point, we don't have a lot of buy-in other than just to join the organization. I think it's good that we're going to probably get in on the beginning of it, not be somebody that gets into it after it's up and successful. I think it also fits well with our economic and development that we're already stressing, which is the intersection of I-90 and I-15 in our county, plus also the connection between Union Pacific going south to Salt Lake and Burlington Northern Lease coming into Butte from one direction.
And with that, Commissioner Olson looks like he froze. So we'll let him come back into.
Well with us. I can't see a downside of this other than another meeting to attend. That's that's the way we get things done. So I'm all in favor. Thank you.
And just like that, he reappears. Commissioner, just one follow-up question that I have. You mentioned that Helena is kind of on the fence on it. What's their rationale? What are they afraid of? What are they not interested in? Have they mentioned that to you?
In so many words, I think they are, well, anything can change by close of business tomorrow night, so we'll see where they're at. But my sense is that they were of the mind to see how this plays out and then determine whether or not it's something they want to participate in. Of course, my comeback is this is the opportunity to get in on the ground floor. Once the authority is established, it's an independent governing body, and counties will then have to petition the authority, the rail authority, as to whether or not they want to join. So this is the easiest point of entry right now. It's not that I can imagine a situation where the rail authority would say to a Lewis and Clark County at a later date, sorry, you missed your chance, take a seat in the caboose or something. But nonetheless, I think this is the easiest point of entry, and it's doing something new. I think typically, probably as seen in your agenda tonight, and certainly the public meeting agendas that we have, most of what we deal with is kind of within our own small geographic area and jurisdictions. This is something a little bit different that we haven't done before, but I think it's an opportunity that the state legislature has provided, so let's avail ourselves of it. And it's a pretty low hurdle to cross. Once you adopt the joint resolution, the only other duty that we have collectively is appoint someone to the initial board of directors. So
Okay.
I wish I had more insight.
No, that's you gave me what you have, so thank you. Commissioner Shea on the question.
Thank you, Chairman Morgan. Thank you, Commissioner Strohmeyer, for entertaining us with all of this great information tonight. I really love it. I have gotten a lot of feedback from people when this started kind of floating around the social media circles and whatnot, and the people that have reached out to me are very much in support of it, and I tend to feel the same way. I do think there is strength in numbers for the cause, so that is always something to think about. That rising tide does float all boats, or I guess run all trains, rising rails, I guess. I'm particularly excited about the social equity in transportation. That is something that I think is really important, and the environmental benefits to mass transit. So I just want you to know that I really like that you mentioned that. That being said, we talk about how to get into the rail authority and what that means for us to be in on the ground floor and have a seat at the table. Would there ever be a situation that a county or a city county wanted to leave the rail authority, and how would that look, and why? What would be the reasons they would possibly want to leave?
Commissioner Strohmeyer.
Mr. Chair, Commissioner, good question. The statute is silent on counties opting out at a later date, and I think that is probably just because of the statutory silence on the matter. I suspect this may be something that would need to be taken up as the authority drafts its bylaws. As far as if a county at some point in time, for whatever reason, decides that the only viable mode of transportation is motor vehicles or airlines, and that we should be about ripping out tracks and passenger rails, then passenger rail systems, then I suspect they could just, the same way that you appoint someone to the board of directors, would be the same mechanism by which you would remove, as a county, that individual who is your representative on the board. Just totally speculating, and I'm probably driving some of the attorneys out there crazy by my speculation, but like I say, the statute is silent on what that would look like, so I think that's one of those pieces that we would figure out as we go. I honestly cannot imagine a scenario where a county would, unless the board just became so dysfunctional that it was counterproductive in some way. I don't know. I can't see that at this point in time.
Along those lines, I have another question. I apologize. Let's talk about liability. As far as the authority goes, what's the liability that the city county is looking at in regards to this?
I would say zero liability from the standpoint that, again, once the authority is established, it is its own independent governing body. And so, as with a fire district, well, maybe that's not a great example, because there are some districts that we create that we also might provide legal representation to and might have some liability for. In this case, and I've had this conversation with our county attorney staff, we just do not see any liability accruing to counties. If anything, if the authority itself does something outlandish, then the authority would be the one on the hook for that action.
Sure. Okay. Any other questions? Well, thank you for the informative presentation and everything. It kind of got everything.
Commissioner Morgan, can I make one more comment?
Commissioner Frederickson.
Since there's no more questions, I'd like to make a motion that we move this communication to the regular meeting to be acted upon.
Commissioner Frederickson, the more appropriate way to do that would be for you to submit a formal letter this Friday, moving it to the agenda. The communication that's before us just asks for a presentation, so we can't really take action on anything with that communication. So just forward or submit a communication this Friday.
Okay. And I'll thank the chief executive for making that recommendation. Sorry.
Okay. So, Commissioner Strohmeyer, thank you again for coming today. I'm sure there's going to be some other questions, and I know we all have your contact information, and if you have any other follow-up questions for us, please let us know, and we'll get them addressed.
Thank you, and I look forward to meeting you all in person at some point in the future, and stay healthy.
You as well.
Dave, thank you for presenting something that's really positive. We could use that right now. Thank you for
My pleasure. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, I will move on to Section 2, the communications. Communication number 19-578. Gary Rundle, citizen, requesting Council of Commissioners consideration to purchase property located at 1820 Banks Avenue, Butte, Montana. I wish to redeem the property from Butte-Silver before the tax sale in February. We will continue to hold this in abeyance. The public hearing for this particular topic has been set for July 22nd, and so those advertisements will be in the newspaper at that time. So we'll continue to hold that in abeyance. Number 2, Communication 19-582, Ed Banderob, Greeley Neighborhood Community Development Corporation, requesting Council of Commissioners to invite a Montana DPHHS toxicologist to give a presentation relative to the hazards and risks of human health of heavy metals contaminants present in the Butte-Silver community. We'll continue to hold that in abeyance. Number 3, Communication 2020-04, Michael Townsend, citizen, requesting Council of Commissioners to consider the repurchase of my home located at 105 West Porphyry. I will comply with all the rules and regulations of the County Enrichment Program. Again, this public hearing will be held on the 22nd in regards to that topic, so we'll continue to hold that in abeyance. Number 4, Communication 2020-224, Todd Bridenfelt Investment LLC, BILLC, requesting Council of Commissioners to approve the purchase of a vacant lot addressed 611 South Idaho, lot number 24 and block number 4 of the Trevonia Addition, Butte, Montana, parcel number 1054300, which BILLC owns as a rental and then immediately will sell it as a nice single-family home. This project will greatly enhance the look of and the property values of the neighborhood. We'll continue to hold this in abeyance. I believe Commissioner Shaw has an update on this one. Commissioner Shaw.
Chairman. I talked to Dan Fisher today. He attended land sales online meeting this afternoon. And we are continuing to wait on the county attorney's office to draft a resolution to rescind the previous resolution, which will make this available to Mr. Breitenfeld. So we will continue to hold that in advance.
Thank you, Chief Executive Commissioner Shaw. We'll move on to number 5, Communication 2020-243. Steve Maloney, 109 North Montana Street, requesting Council of Commissioners approval for the survey of lot assessment code number 000-1892400. This survey will facilitate a possible future purchase of this lot. We will continue to hold this in abeyance, and I believe Commissioner Shaw has an update on this as well.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. At this time, this gentleman is going through the survey process, and he's also staying in communication with parking control because a portion of this land is part of a parking lot. So continue to hold it.
Okay. We'll continue to hold that in abeyance. Number 6, Communication 2020-248. Dylan Pipinich, Assistant Planning Director, requesting Council of Commissioners permission to conduct a public hearing on Wednesday, July 1st, 2020 on the Montana Connection subdivision. We did hold this public hearing last week, so Commissioner Shaw.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move to place 2020-248 on file.
Okay, do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, the motion's been made and seconded to place Communication 2020-248 on file. Is there anything on the question? Would everyone please vote? Everybody? Okay, looks like, would anyone like to change their vote? Can we record the vote? Looks like 10 yea, 0 nay. Commissioner Callahan, though, can you please signify how you voted? Commissioner Callahan?
I'm a yes.
Okay, looks like 11 yea, 0 nay. Motion passes. Number 7, Communication 2020-258. Lori Casey, Planning Director, requesting Council of Commissioners to be advised that the Butte-Silver Planning Board, who serves as the zoning board, has rendered a recommendation regarding zone change application number 180 regarding licensed community residential facilities. We will continue to hold this in abeyance, and a public hearing has been scheduled as part of this process for August 5th. So we will continue to hold this in abeyance pending that public hearing. Number 8, Communication 2020-260. Sean Cusich, citizen, requesting Council of Commissioners permission to purchase the property at 103 Sutter Street, Butte, Montana for $500. I plan to immediately begin renovating the house. We will continue to hold this in abeyance as I believe it's going out for developer's packet, but I will let Commissioner Shaw respond to that. Commissioner Shaw.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Dan Fisher told me that there's a possibility of a recommendation that this goes to a developer packet to offer to the general public first, but we will hold for that letter of recommendation coming from the land sales department.
Okay, we'll continue to hold this in abeyance. Number 9, Communication 2020-263. David Borgen, Jones and Mungus PLC, requesting Council of Commissioners for time on the July 15th, 2020 regular meeting agenda for a public hearing regarding an opportunity for public comment on whether these proposed rehabilitations of existing affordable housing projects meet a community housing need. Ravonda Stordahl will be attending to answer questions. We will continue to hold that in abeyance pending that date. Number 10, Communication 2020-268. Eric Gonder, FOG Inspector, requesting Council of Commissioners for time on the July 15th, 2020 regular meeting agenda for presentations on fats, oils, and grease FOG program. We'll continue to hold that in abeyance pending the July 15th date. Number 11, Communication 2020-274, Danette Gleason, Finance and Budget Director, requesting Council of Commissioners for time on the July 15th, 2020 agenda to make a presentation on the fiscal year 2021 budget. We'll continue to hold that in abeyance pending the July 15th date as well. The next item on tonight's agenda is any public comment on any public matter not on the agenda. I don't have anything to read, but we will go to the phone lines and see if there is anything on there. Nothing, no calls. We'll just give it a minute. There doesn't appear to be any phone calls yet. Okay. Seeing no phone calls, I would ask for a motion to adjourn. Commissioner Shaw.
I move to adjourn.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All right, motion made and seconded. Anything on the question? All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Hearing none, motion passes. Have a good night, everyone. I look forward to seeing you at some point in the future.
Good night.
Thank you.
See you next week.